The dull ache at the back of my skull, a mix of boredom and too much cheap wine on Wednesday nights, had become my constant companion. I rubbed my temples, staring at my reflection. The dress, a daring red thing I wouldn't have touched a year ago, mocked me with its vibrancy. Was this really me? The woman who used to laugh until she cried with old college friends, who'd hop a plane to Vegas with barely a suitcase. Jess, you going out? Jim's voice drifted in, muffled by the bathroom door. Typical. He was on the couch, I bet, eyes glued to some sports recap or other. Didn't even bother to look up. Yeah, sis needs me to babysit. I called back, forcing a light tone. He mumbled something in response, likely a grunt or a non-committal, okay. That was our thrilling Friday night exchange. Pathetic. I walked out, pasting on a smile despite the wave of not sadness, exactly, more like a hollow resignation that had begun creeping over me. Jim was a good guy. Reliable, safe, but lately, that safety felt stifling, like a blanket on a sweltering summer day. I craved a spark, a jolt, anything to feel truly alive again. The party thrummed with an energy that set my heart racing the moment I stepped through the door. This was nothing like the barbecues and dinner parties Jim and I usually endured. No, this was different. A whirl of impossibly stylish strangers, their laughter like fine champagne against the soft murmur of expensive music. For the first time in ages, a shiver of something that wasn't dread rippled through me. You must be Jessica, a voice purred, and I turned to find a man with startling blue eyes offering me a glass of bubbly. I'm Andrew, welcome. Andrew? I let a hint of surprise into my voice. I didn't realize this was your thing. Honestly, I couldn't even place the guy. Jim must have met him through work. He grinned, and oh boy, that grin did things to my insides that no sensible wife should feel. Oh, it's definitely not. But sometimes, he leaned closer, the scent of his cologne heady and intoxicating, a man needs to spice things up a bit. It was like he flipped a switch deep inside me, a switch I hadn't even realized was getting rusty. A reckless, thrilling energy surged through me. I met his gaze, lifting my chin in a defiance that felt both alien and exhilarating. Maybe it was time I spiced things up, too. The second drink, or was it the third, slid down my throat like liquid courage. Andrew kept me laughing, his stories a whirlwind of travel and daring exploits, the total opposite of Jim's meticulously planned weekends. I felt a giddy rush of excitement that was downright dangerous. So, tell me, Jessica, his voice lowered, and the heat in his eyes sent a delicious shiver down my spine, what does a beautiful woman like you do for real fun? The old me, the predictable me, would have sputtered about family and hobbies. But some switch had flipped, and a recklessness I hadn't felt since college flared within me. Honestly, I can't quite remember, I confessed with a laugh that sounded a bit too flirtatious, even to my own ears. That's when I noticed the other man, watching intently from across the room. His wasn't Andrew's easy charm, but a raw intensity that made my skin prickle. A slow smile spread across his face, and something in the tilt of his lips, the flicker in his eyes, promised trouble, a different kind of trouble than Andrew's playful banter. Well, Jessica, the newcomer interrupted, his voice a smoky drawl that sent another, stranger shiver through me. Perhaps I could help refresh your memory. His name was Marcus, and within an hour, I was dizzy and drunk not just on champagne, but on the intoxicating attention, the raw boldness, the feeling of being vibrantly, recklessly alive. It was like a forgotten part of myself was awakening, something buried under years of routine and predictability, and I wasn't exactly sure if that was good or very, very bad. The rest of the night is a blur of stolen moments. A brush against my arm in the crowded hallway, a whispered, scandalous proposition in the dimly lit garden, and a complete, dizzying surrender to desire in a guest room I hoped none of Jim's colleagues would ever see. The old Jessica, the cautious and safe Jessica, would have been absolutely horrified. But this new, reckless Jessica, she was thrilled, and maybe a little bit terrified, too, because underneath the thrill, a tiny voice whispered about consequences, about lines crossed. Yet, For the first time in ages, that voice felt distant and weak, easily drowned out by the pounding of my pulse and the heady rush of feeling something truly alive, even if it was tinged with danger. My head throbbed like a drumbeat, and the luxurious sheets felt like sandpaper against my skin. Guilt gnawed at me as I blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling. I'd never done anything like this. Not ever. A sharp stab of regret twisted in my gut, but then an odd flicker of defiance rose up to meet it. Because beneath the shame, there was also a strange, heady thrill. Getting home was like stepping into a warped reality. Jim was sprawled on the couch, snoring softly, an untouched bowl of cereal beside him. The normalcy of it all, the predictability, was almost suffocating after the exhilaration of the night before. I felt a flare of anger at him, at his absolute cluelessness. "Hey, how was Lisa?" he muttered the next morning, his voice thick with sleep as he gulped down coffee. It took every ounce of strength not to fling the mug across the kitchen. "Fine, kids are a riot, kinda wish we..." I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence about starting a family when I'd so profoundly betrayed the one I had. The first message arrived a week later. Just a text, no name. "I saw you." That dress looked better on the floor. My blood ran cold, panic fluttered in my chest, yet mixed with a sick jolt of fascination. Who knew, could it be Andrew, Marcus? A twisted part of me hoped it was one of them, that it was just a game born from the night's heated abandon. But the messages kept coming. Darker, more detailed. Things only someone who was there could have seen. I started to suspect someone closer. Not Jim. He was too oblivious, but a colleague, maybe? I felt fear snake around my heart, but under that fear, a thrill twisted too. It was sick, wrong, but I couldn't deny the rush that came with having a secret this explosive. I tried to ignore it, pretend my life was normal. But normalcy, it turned out, had lost its flavor. Everything seemed dull in comparison. Jim's jokes fell flat, our dinners were bland, and even my reflection in the mirror seemed muted. The wife staring back looked tired, yes, but also touched by a spark I couldn't fully extinguish, a recklessness I didn't want to let go of. My days became a blur of paranoia and a strange, unsettling exhilaration. With each new text, every cryptic phrase dripping with accusation, I'd cycle through my suspects. Andrew's smooth charm seemed to mask a cruel edge now. Was this his twisted sense of humor? Marcus. Well, Marcus always had a streak of darkness, a dangerous gleam in his eye that perhaps wasn't just for show. Suspicion was a disease. I saw it in how Andrew and Marcus eyed each other across crowded rooms, tension sizzling between them where camaraderie had once been. It started with subtle jabs, snide comments disguised as jokes, then escalating into tense, hushed confrontations that sent a thrill of wicked pleasure through me. After all, I was the catalyst for their descent into distrust. It was ugly, yes, but I couldn't stop myself. Playing them against each other became a twisted game I couldn't resist. I'd whisper to Marcus about Andrew's smug grin, a sly hint that maybe he was the one delighting in my torment. Then, I'd drop subtle barbs around Andrew about Marcus's obsession, a carelessly tossed match to ignite his short temper. Their unraveling satisfied something dark within me, but it wasn't enough. It spurred me on, twisting the knife further. "You don't seem happy lately," I prodded Jim one evening, a feigned note of concern in my voice. It was a line I'd practiced, the bait laid carefully. His response was textbook, predictable even. "Tired, work's been crazy," he mumbled, barely looking up from his phone. He always fell for it, so easily manipulated with just the right hint of dissatisfaction. I pushed further, a gentle hand on his arm, a worried frown marring my brow. "Is it just work, though? I feel like maybe you need more." His insecurity, a tender spot I knew well, flared to life. Over the next weeks, his questions turned sharper, his attention more suffocating. It was perfect, his rising possessiveness became a weapon I wielded with chilling delight. I became the victim in his eyes, his fear making him the perfect pawn in my twisted game. He was the final piece of my puzzle. With everything spiraling the way I'd orchestrated, I felt an intoxicating sense of power. I wasn't just a pawn anymore, I was the queen, and my chess pieces were dancing exactly how I commanded. The final confrontation didn't happen in a dark alleyway or shadowy parking lot like in those bad crime shows Jim liked. It was at a charity event of all places, the kind of glitzy affair where everyone wore pasted-on smiles and designer dresses. Marcus cornered me by the dessert table, his eyes no longer smoldering with a playful heat, but blazing with a fury that made me take a step back. "We need to talk," he hissed, his voice barely a whisper but laced with enough venom to cut glass. Away from prying eyes, on a deserted balcony, he laid it all bare. He wasn't just a suspect, he was the blackmailer. The messages, the threats. A twisted desire for revenge fueled by my cruel game playing. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I'd underestimated him, mistook his dark intensity for something I could control. How wrong I'd been. "It was never about money," he snarled, a cruel twist to his lips. "You think you can play with people, break them for your sick amusement? I'm going to break you, make you pay for every damn thing you've done." His threats weren't just about tearing my relationship with Jim apart, he wanted total destruction. Leaking the truth to my friends, my judgmental sister, posting proof all over the internet where it would never fade away. He'd make me a pariah, a cautionary tale of a reckless housewife getting her comeuppance. Panic flared hotter than the shame. For all my manipulative bravado, I was facing a force I hadn't accounted for, an obsession I'd helped create. And that's when it hit me. Desperation, yes, but with a flash of the old recklessness bubbling within. Marcus had cornered me, but perhaps I could corner him back. The plan came together with terrifying clarity. It was twisted, dangerous, the kind of thing the old, cautious me would have abhorred. But that part of me was long gone. "You want to play rough? Let's play." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but there was a steely determination behind them. I lured him back to my place, a flimsy excuse about needing to talk, a promise of resolution. He fell for it, arrogance blinding him to the fact that the prey might now be the predator. Inside, it was a scene I'd meticulously stage. A few misplaced items, a hint of a struggle, and my word against his. It was risky as hell, but with my whole world crumbling, the gamble felt darkly thrilling. What happened next is a blur of adrenaline and terror. His accusations turned into shouting, shoving. And then, the moment I orchestrated, the slip, the misplaced object, the desperate act that ended it all. In the aftermath, it was me calling the police, me playing the distraught victim, me weaving a tale of an obsessed lover gone too far. And the beautiful thing, the truly terrible thing, is that it was believable. Cleaning up was mechanical, shock had numbed me, replaced by a chilling practicality. Every trace of the struggle, every item out of place meticulously put back, the scene sanitized of truth. My acting skills, honed during my treacherous game, kicked in on autopilot. I summoned the tears, the trembling breaths, the carefully worded account of terror and self-defense for the police. In the days that followed, there was an onslaught of sympathy, the concerned whispers of friends, the pitying stares from neighbors. Jim, once a dull background figure, became hyper-focused, his concern twisting into a possessive, almost suffocating protectiveness. He monitored my every move as if waiting for me to crumble, for the facade of the distraught wife to crack. The attention, the careful watching eyes, should have been terrifying. It was proof of how easily my lies could unravel. Instead, it felt like a perverse kind of victory. I was trapped, yes, but I'd constructed the cage myself. News of Marcus's death rippled through the tight-knit circles we traveled in. Whispers of tragic accident did little to hide the undercurrent of suspicion, the lingering questions. Andrew disappeared entirely, either racked with guilt over failing to see his friend's dark turn or simply terrified of being implicated in my web of lies and betrayal. Either way, my pawns had vanished from the board, leaving me isolated on my ill-gotten throne. I thought I'd crave freedom, the thrill of escape. Instead, my victory felt empty. The constant looking over my shoulder, the jolt of fear at every unexpected knock, the guilt that gnawed at me in quiet moments. This was my prize. The thrill of the game had curdled into constant dread. I'd won, but at a devastating cost. Sleep became the ultimate torment. No amount of wine could blur the faces that haunted me. Jim's, etched with a fearful vigilance that chilled me far more than his complacency ever had. Marcus's, twisted in a mask of fury, and perhaps worst of all, Andrew's, a silent accusation of betrayal cutting far deeper than any open hostility. The police closed the case, a clear-cut act of self-defense against an unstable man. The world saw a grieving woman who had narrowly escaped tragedy. What they didn't see was a prisoner of my own making, haunted by the ghosts of choices I couldn't take back, and the constant, sickening fear that one day, the truth would come clawing its way out. The first few months after Marcus were a bizarre, claustrophobic mix of relief and suffocating terror. Jim, bless his naive heart, bought my performance hook, line, and sinker. His worry transformed him from a lazy, indifferent husband to a vigilant watchdog, determined to shield his fragile wife from further harm. At first, the constant attention was an odd comfort. It meant no one suspected the truth, that I, the reckless adulteress and cold-blooded manipulator, had escaped unscathed. But as weeks stretched into months, Jim's concern twisted into something darker, an obsession disguised as affection. He had to know where I was at all times, checking my phone location obsessively. The questions came too. Innocent at first, about how I was feeling, what I was doing to get over it. Slowly, they grew sharper, probing at my every word for signs of a breakdown he seemed both to dread and anticipate. The guilt was a constant companion, a low thrum of unease that sharpened into terror at the slightest provocation. Each passing police car set my pulse racing, every unexpected knock on the door made me jump. I swore I saw Marcus everywhere, in the flicker of shadows, in the faces of strangers' accusing eyes burning into my soul. Jim called it concern, protectiveness. But it felt more like a velvet-lined cage. He insisted on driving me to appointments, walking me to the mailbox like I was a skittish child, not a grown woman. His attempts at chivalry morphed into a suffocating control. The irony was nauseating. I'd craved excitement, a break from the predictability of my life. Now, I was a prisoner of my own deceit, trapped in a marriage that had become twisted and unfamiliar. My carefully constructed lies had transformed my own home into a cell. Escape became an obsession, twisting in my mind every waking hour. But every plan crumbled under scrutiny. Running away meant losing everything, the house, the financial security. Jim would undoubtedly spin a sympathetic tale of his wife crumbling under the weight of tragedy, painting me as a victim, unstable and dangerous. The truth could never be known, not without destroying the life I'd spent years building. And yet, staying was unbearable. Jim's overbearing protectiveness made my skin crawl. The weight of my secret, the constant fear of discovery, it felt like it would crush me. I was stuck in a horrifying limbo, desperate for freedom but terrified of the cost. Just when I thought I couldn't sink any lower, a ghost from my past crawled out of the woodwork. It was Claire, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. She'd heard the news about Marcus somehow, and her sympathy call sent a spike of pure terror through me. Claire had no idea about the party, my betrayal, but she knew me. She remembered the wild streak, the reckless glint in my eyes that had been buried under suburban boredom. I nearly hung up on her. But then, a desperate, twisted kind of relief washed over me. Here was someone who wasn't completely fooled by my grieving widow act, someone who saw a flicker of the old me, the dangerous me. We met for coffee, a pathetic attempt at normalcy in the bright, bustling cafe. And bit by bit, I let the mask slip. Not the full truth, of course, but hints. The restlessness before the party, the dissatisfaction with Jim, that feeling of being trapped in a life I never truly chose for myself. Claire didn't judge, at least not outwardly. Instead, she listened, and a strange, twisted connection formed between us. Shared secrets have a way of doing that, even when they're only half-truths. She, unlike everyone else, didn't see me as a victim, but as a woman capable of darkness. And perversely, it was liberating. It was in those clandestine meetings, whispered conversations over bitter coffee, that a desperate plan started to take hold. Claire, with her quiet intensity and her knack for reading people, became my co-conspirator. We tapped into Jim's paranoia, his fear that I wasn't as broken as he believed. A misplaced item he was sure I wouldn't own, a text message with no name appearing and disappearing on my phone. Tiny seeds meant to make his insecurity bloom into something monstrous. Then, the clincher. Evidence slipped into his briefcase that suggested a hidden connection between him and Marcus. An old photo, a carefully forged note, just ambiguous enough to make his suspicious mind run wild. He'd already begun to doubt everyone around me, maybe now, he'd doubt himself. It was a dangerous game, a house of cards that could come crashing down at any moment. But the alternative, my slow suffocation, was far more terrifying. The tension in our house ratcheted up with each passing day. Jim's questions became accusations, his concern morphed into suspicion. Every time he looked at me, I saw a darkness in his eyes, a reflection of my own twisted actions. It was exhilarating and sickening at the same time. I was playing with fire, and the inevitable explosion was coming. It all went down one rainy Tuesday night. Jim had been needling me for days, the faked evidence gnawing away at him. His usual blandness gave way to bursts of rage followed by sullen silences. I was walking on eggshells. But that night, his suspicion targeted Andrew of all people. A wrong glance at a fundraiser, apparently, was enough to reignite the festering paranoia I'd cultivated. He stormed off, the accusation ringing in my ears. "I'm going to sort this out once and for all." The downpour, his drunken determination. It was the perfect storm I'd been waiting for. I knew, with a predator's certainty, that he was heading straight for Andrew's apartment. What followed was a blur of panic and calculated relief. Sitting on my couch, the rain pounding on the window, my pulse throbbed in my ears. Had I gone too far? The image of Jim, red-faced and wild, confronting an equally unstable Andrew filled me with dread. Yet, a wicked part of me relished the chaos I'd unleashed. The call came late that night, not from Jim, but from the police. It was as I expected, but also so much worse. A brutal fight, a body, maybe two. The details were sickening, and beneath the shock, I felt a chilling satisfaction. The mess was out of my hands now, a consequence of a game I'd set in motion but hadn't needed to finish myself. In the aftermath, I was a machine. My performance was Oscar-worthy. The tears of the devastated wife, the confusion, the trembling hands clutching a sympathetic detective's cart. Jim's simmering paranoia, his erratic behavior before the disappearance, it became a convenient narrative, painting him as unstable, consumed by jealousy, responsible for his own demise. The investigation dragged on, but no suspicion fell on me. I was clever, they'd say, and brave. I'd endured so much. Yet, amidst the whispers of pity and inheritance that made me nauseously wealthy, true freedom remained out of reach. Sleep became a torture chamber, filled with faces. Jim's, contorted in rage, then blank and lifeless. Marcus's, a chilling mask of accusation before everything went dark. And Andrew's, with its flash of hurt and betrayal, perhaps the worst of all. I hardly recognized the woman I'd become. The wild spark I yearned to recapture was dead, replaced by a coldness that seeped into my bones. The wealth, the house, the illusion of freedom I'd so desperately craved, it tasted like ashes. Winning had come at a terrible cost. I was, in a cruel twist, both liberated from constraint and trapped in a prison of my own design. The thrill of the game had faded, leaving not a triumphant victor, but a haunted woman, forever shackled to a devastating choice. Alone in my echoing, lavish home, I was nothing more than a ghost, a chilling reminder that vengeance is a dish best left Friday night was supposed to be just another fun evening out, but there I was, standing in the middle of a lavish house party, the only woman in a sea of men. My girls had bailed last minute, leaving me adrift in a tide of testosterone. The warm air buzzed with energy, a mix of cologne and anticipation thickening the atmosphere. Then came Mark, sauntering over with that cocky grin that somehow managed to be charming. "That dress is a game changer," he whispered, his words weaving around me like a spell. I laughed it off, but inside, I felt the first tug of something dangerous, a curiosity piqued by his attention. The night unfolded with a reckless kind of magic. Drinks in hand, we all dove into conversations that danced daringly on the edge of propriety. It was exhilarating, the way the alcohol seemed to blur the lines, how the room felt charged with possibility. "Truth or dare," someone announced, and suddenly I was being dared to kiss Tom, Mark's buddy who'd been throwing me cheeky glances all night. It was absurd, juvenile even, but in the moment, it felt like the most thrilling challenge. So, I did it. Our lips met briefly, and I felt a rush of adrenaline, a line crossed. The party's pulse quickened, and before I knew it, I was being led into a dimly lit room by Mark, Tom, and two others. My heart raced, excitement mingling with a hint of fear. What was I doing? The thought flickered through my mind, quickly drowned out by the intoxicating mix of desire and the unknown. In that room, the atmosphere thickened, charged with an intensity that felt both foreign and familiar. I was far from the safety of my usual boundaries, teetering on the edge of a decision that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The night took a turn I never saw coming, swept up in a whirlwind of choices I can hardly piece together. It was as if I stepped outside myself, caught in the rush of the moment, the thrill, and the sheer intoxication of being wanted by not one, but several. The details are a blur, a series of decisions made in a haze of desire and alcohol, each step leading me further from the woman I thought I was. Waking up the next morning was like being dunked into ice-cold reality. My head pounded, not just from the hangover but from the weight of what I'd done. The memories were fragmented, but the shame was whole, consuming me as I stumbled my way home in last night's clothes, the evidence of my betrayal. The house was too quiet when I walked in, the air charged with a tension that made my stomach drop. John was sitting at the kitchen table, his face a mask of calm that didn't reach his eyes. The moment he looked up, I knew. Somehow, he knew. "Where were you last night?" His voice was steady, but there was an underlying tremor that told me this was more than just a casual question. I opened my mouth to reply, to fabricate some excuse, but the words died on my lips. There was no hiding from this, no running from the truth that was already out there. John slid his phone across the table, a single photo displayed on the screen. It was me, a version of me I barely recognized, in a compromising embrace that left nothing to the imagination. The room seemed to spin, the walls closing in as I looked from the photo to John's face, searching for some sign of what came next. "How could you?" It was a whisper, filled with a pain that cut deeper than any shout. His eyes, usually so warm and full of life, were dull with hurt and disbelief. The confrontation I dreaded was happening, the reality of my actions crashing down around me. There were no words to undo what had been done, no excuses that could cover the magnitude of my betrayal. The man I loved, the life we'd built, it was all hanging by a thread, frayed and fragile in the harsh light of day. The moment John walked out the door, my world spun off its axis. I scrambled for words, for any argument that could undo the damage, pleading with him to see it was the alcohol, the atmosphere, anything but a reflection of my true feelings. "John, please, you have to believe me. It wasn't me, not the real me." I stammered, my voice laced with desperation. John just stood there, a silent sentinel to my unraveling. His quiet was worse than any shouting could have been, a storm of emotions brewing behind those calm eyes. I felt naked under his gaze, every excuse sounding hollow even to my own ears. Then he left, just grabbed his bag and walked out, leaving me in a whirlwind of panic and confusion. The finality of the door clicking shut echoed like a gunshot in my heart. I tried to call, to text, anything to bridge the silence he left in his wake, but my attempts vanished into the void, blocked at every turn. The next day, a mutual friend let slip that John was crashing at his brother's place, a fortress against my attempts to explain, to apologize. It felt like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. So, I did the only thing left. I wrote him a letter, pouring every ounce of regret and sorrow onto the page, and sent it to his work, hoping against hope it would reach him. But John was a ghost, gone from work, his colleagues whispering about personal time and space needed. Then, a bombshell dropped. John had been planning a surprise anniversary trip for us, a revelation that twisted the knife deeper into the wound of my guilt. Driven by a mix of desperation and hope, I went to his brother's house, begging for a chance to explain, to make things right. But the door was closed on me, literally and metaphorically. John didn't want to see me, his brother's words a polite but firm barrier to any reconciliation. 2 weeks of silence stretched into an eternity, each day a reminder of the chasm my actions had created. Then, the letter came, not the olive branch I'd been praying for, but a formal request for separation and the beginning of divorce proceedings. John's words were clear and final, a written confirmation of the end of our story. The paper trembled in my hands, the weight of my betrayal finally sinking in. The man I loved, the life we shared, it was all slipping through my fingers, undone by a single night's folly. The reality of my actions, the depth of the hurt I'd caused, it all came crashing down, leaving me to face the ruins of my own making. The letter from John hit like a wrecking ball, words on paper cutting deeper than I ever imagined words could. "I can't move past this," he wrote, every sentence a nail in the coffin of our marriage. The trust we built, shattered in one night. His words echoed in my head, a relentless reminder of the irreversible damage I'd done. I sought legal advice, clinging to some shred of hope, only to be met with the harsh reality that John wanted a clean break. No negotiations, no settlements, just an end. It was a clear message, he was done, completely and utterly done with us. In a last-ditch effort, I showed up at his office, hoping for a chance to explain, to plead, to do anything to bridge the chasm between us. But he was gone, transferred to another branch to avoid me. The finality of his actions left me reeling. Then came the gut punch of seeing him move on through the lens of social media, living out the adventures we dreamed of together, but alone or with friends. It was like watching our future unravel, a future he was now crafting without me. I tried to pick up the pieces, to find some semblance of normalcy in work and self-improvement, but the effort felt hollow. Every achievement was overshadowed by the absence of the person I'd imagined sharing it all with. The day I received the divorce papers felt surreal. Sitting across from John at the signing, I saw the man I loved transformed by hurt and betrayal. His cold indifference was a clear message, the woman he loved was a stranger to him now. Our divorce was finalized in silence, an anticlimactic end to a storm of emotions. No arguments, no dramatic showdowns, just the quiet acknowledgement of a love lost, a trust broken beyond repair. The finality of it all left me facing a future I never imagined, alone and filled with regret for the choices that led me here. When I heard through the grapevine that John was leaving town for good, it felt like the ground beneath me shifted. Taking a job in another city, he was putting physical miles on the emotional distance that had grown between us. It was a move I understood but couldn't help feeling gutted by. The day he was set to leave, I toyed with the idea of reaching out, maybe to offer a clumsy, last-minute olive branch or just to say goodbye. But deep down, I knew it was too late for any gesture of mine to bridge the chasm that my actions had created. Word got around about John's quiet farewell gathering. It was so him, no fanfare, just a subtle, dignified exit. A stark contrast to the reckless, loud chaos that I had initiated months ago. It made me reflect on how much had changed, how much I had changed everything. In the wake of his departure, the void he left was palpable. Friends we once shared seemed to silently pick sides, and unsurprisingly, few chose mine. The loneliness was expected, yet its sting was sharper than I anticipated. walking through town became an exercise in resilience. I could feel the weight of whispers and judgmental glances, the social fallout from my actions painting me as the villain in our story. It was a role I never wanted, yet here I was, living it. Trying to throw myself into work only highlighted the isolation further. Colleagues, once friendly and engaging, now offered nothing more than polite smiles and curt nods. My professional reputation, like my personal one, had taken a hit, the details of my private life apparently open for public consumption. The final straw came with an invitation to a social event, a momentary spark of normalcy that was quickly snuffed out when the host awkwardly rescinded the invite, citing loyalty to John. It was a clear sign of how far-reaching the consequences of my actions were, affecting aspects of my life I hadn't even considered. Each of these moments, these actions, they were like pieces of a new reality I was being forced to assemble, a life built on the ruins of my decisions, where even the act of rebuilding felt like a reminder of what was lost. In a bid to piece myself back together, I threw myself into new hobbies and therapy sessions that felt more like confessions. It was in these moments of forced introspection and clumsy pottery classes that I sought a semblance of the person I used to be, or maybe the one I hoped to become. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Running into Tom at the grocery store was like stumbling into a ghost from my past. His quick glance and even quicker retreat spoke volumes, a clear sign of my newfound status as a social pariah. The awkwardness of the encounter lingered long after, a stark reminder of the bridges I'd burned. Then there was John, or at least, the digital specter of him I'd follow from afar. Photos of him smiling, genuinely happy and engaged in his new community, were a punch to the gut. There he was, flourishing without me, while I felt stuck, rooted in the aftermath of my own making. Dating, if you could even call it that, was a minefield. Each attempt at connection felt doomed from the start, my past a shadow I couldn't shake. Conversations that should have been about favorite movies and hopeful plans instead felt overshadowed by the elephant in the room, my infidelity and divorce. One night, driven by a masochistic need to confront my demons, I found myself outside the house where it all began. The scene of the party that changed everything looked innocuous now, just another suburban home under the moonlight. Yet, standing there, I felt the weight of that night all over again. It was then that my phone rang, a call from a mutual friend who, unaware of my current location, dropped the bombshell. John was engaged. The news was a gut punch, the final nail in the coffin of a marriage I had destroyed. In that moment, outside that house, I felt the last vestige of hope slip through my fingers. There was a part of me, irrational and desperate, that wanted to reach out to John's fiancée, to offer explanations, apologies, anything. But what good would it do to drag them, through the mud of my mess? No, some actions are beyond redemption, some wounds too deep to heal with words. Each of these events, each painstaking step, was a lesson in the consequences of my actions. In seeking solace, encountering old flames, witnessing John's new life, failing at new beginnings, and facing the ghosts of my past, I was learning to live with the reality I had created. It took a long, hard look in the mirror for me to finally admit the role I played in the unraveling of my own life. Acknowledging my part in the destruction of my marriage was like swallowing a bitter pill, a necessary step toward healing, yet painful in its truth. Seeking solace and understanding, I found myself sitting in a circle of strangers at a support group, sharing stories of regret and repercussions. There was comfort in their shared experiences, a sense of not being alone in my journey through the aftermath of my actions. I reached out to old friends, hoping to mend bridges I had carelessly burned. But it quickly became apparent that some relationships were beyond repair. The warmth and trust that once defined these connections had evaporated, leaving a cold void in their place. Work became my refuge, a place to drown out the noise of my thoughts. Yet, even as I threw myself into projects, the passion that once drove my ambition felt extinguished. My career, once a source of immense pride, had become merely a distraction from the void within. The thought of starting anew in a different place crossed my mind more than once. But a change of scenery couldn't fix what was broken inside. The real journey, I realized, was learning to forgive myself. When I learned of John's marriage through the glossy sheen of social media, the news stung with a finality I hadn't anticipated. The images of his quiet ceremony, the happiness radiating from him and his bride, underscored the stark contrast between our paths. His life had moved forward, while I felt stuck in the shadow of our past. In a moment of painful clarity, I penned a letter to John. Not in a bid for reconciliation, but as an offering of remorse. I poured my heart into the words, expressing my regret for the pain I caused and wishing him the happiness he deserved. Dropping the letter into the mailbox felt like releasing a part of my soul into the abyss. It was a gesture, symbolic of letting go, yet laden with the knowledge that it might not change anything. But it was a step I needed to take, for both of us. As I walked away, the weight of my actions and their irreversible consequences settled heavily on my shoulders. The future loomed before me, a path I had to walk alone. The silence of my empty home was a stark reminder of the cost of my choices, a testament to the damage done and the life I had to rebuild from the wreckage of my own. All right, grab a beer and pull up a chair, 'cause I've got a tale that's gonna knock your socks off. It's not your run-of-the-mill drama. It's about me, my not-so-perfect life, and how I royally screwed up. No flowery stuff, just the raw, unfiltered truth. So, picture this. Me, a regular woman, been married for a good chunk of years, 2 kids, the whole shebang. Life was like one of those TV shows where every day is predictably okay. But, you know, even the calmest seas get stormy. Enter John, my coworker. Now, John's not your movie star hunk, but there's something about him, you know? We start chatting, grabbing coffee, harmless stuff. But, as life loves irony, things escalated quicker than a wildfire in dry grass. Before I knew it, we were tangled up in an affair. Classic, huh? Now, here's where it gets spicy. My husband, let's call him Mr. Sherlock, because damn, he's got a nose for trouble. He's a lawyer, the shrewd, eagle-eyed type. I thought I was slick, covering my tracks, erasing texts. But he was onto me, gathering evidence like some TV detective. Meanwhile, there's me, riding this roller coaster of guilt and thrill. I'm telling you, it's a weird mix. Every time I'm with John, it's like fireworks, but then I go home, see my husband, and the guilt hits me like a train. But do I stop? Nope. I'm on this adrenaline high, totally blind to the storm brewing. And get this, my husband's not just sitting around. He hires a private investigator. Can you believe that? A real-life pie, tailing me, snapping pictures. It's like something out of a noir film, except I'm the clueless dame. Now, here comes the icing on this disaster cake. John and I, we planned this secret getaway. Thought we were smart, using fake names, paying cash. No way anyone's finding out, we tell ourselves. Oh, how wrong we were. So there I was, living my double life, thinking I'm the master of deception. Little did I know, my husband, Mr. Sherlock, was 2 steps ahead, collecting his evidence, building his case. And me? I'm just plunging headfirst into the biggest mess of my life. That's where I'm gonna leave it for now. But trust me, the story only gets crazier from here. So, what do you think? Sounds like a train wreck, right? Well, buckle up, 'cause this ride's just getting started. Okay, so let me take you back to this one crazy week, right? I just got back from this. Let's call it a work trip, with John. You know, the guy from the office who's way too charming for his own good. And there I was, stepping back into my house, my heart racing like a kid who's just nicked a candy bar. It was this crazy mix of guilt and excitement. I mean, on one hand, I'm feeling alive, but on the other, it's like I'm walking into a house built on a landmine. Now, my husband, let's call him Dave, he's usually Mr. Attentive, right? But that day, it's like I walked into a different dimension. He's there, but not really there. You know what I mean? He's flipping through the mail, mumbling about bills or whatever, not even a glance. It's like I'm a ghost. And I'm thinking, okay, weird, but maybe he's just tired. But then, it's like the guy's gone undercover. He's quieter, and his eyes, I swear, they're like those of a hawk. He's watching, calculating. I can feel it, but I'm just playing dumb, acting like everything's normal, talking about the kids' school and whatnot. And here's where it gets even weirder. Dave starts having these hush-hush phone calls, sneaking around like a teenager. One day, I overhear something about a lawyer, and my stomach just drops. I mean, Dave's a lawyer, but this sounded personal. My mind's racing, thinking, is he on to me? Nah, he can't be. But deep down, I know something's up. I start noticing stuff, like how he's not really looking at me anymore. It's like he's looking through me, And he's taking more care of his appearance, suddenly hitting the gym, dressing sharper. I'm like, who's this for, huh? I've known this guy for over a decade, and it's like he's turning into someone else. Then, one evening, I catch a glimpse of some document with divorce plastered all over it. My heart's pounding, and I'm thinking, oh crap, this is real. But I don't confront him. No. I just let it simmer, pretending I'm clueless. It's like we're both in this twisted game, pretending everything's fine, walking on eggshells. The air's thick with unsaid things, and I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, Dave, he's just plowing on, business as usual, while I'm losing my mind over here. So, that's the sitch. Crazy, huh? I'm living in this house, playing happy families, while my marriage is silently imploding. And the worst part? I've got no one to blame but myself. Stick around, buddy, 'cause this story's only gonna get wilder. You ever feel like you're on a roller coaster that's just about to go off the rails? That's me, right now. So, grab a drink and listen to this mess I've landed myself in. I'm tangled up in this affair with John, my coworker. The one I told you about. It started as a fling, but now? It's like I'm in quicksand. The more I struggle, the deeper I sink. Every rational part of me is screaming, end it. But there's this other part, totally hooked, can't let go. It's like I'm living in this dizzying fog of what-ifs and buts. Then, out of the blue, Dave's brother, Mike, drops this bomb. We're at this family barbecue, and he pulls me aside, all serious. He's like, I know about John. My heart stops. I mean, it literally feels like it stops. I play it cool, laugh it off, but inside, I'm freaking out. If Mike knows, does Dave know too? Now, I'm in full-on panic mode. Every look, every word from Dave feels loaded. Is he on to me? Is he just playing it cool? I'm analyzing every damn thing, but I'm too scared to ask, too scared to confess. It's like I'm stuck in this nightmare, and I can't wake up. But wait, it gets crazier. John's wife, Sarah, she corners me one day after work. This woman, who I've had drinks with, shared laughs with, she's standing there, eyes blazing, and she says, I know about you and John. My world just stops. I feel like I'm gonna throw up, pass out, all of it. She's not yelling or crying. She's just disappointed, and that's worse. That's when it hits me, like a slap in the face. What the hell am I doing? I'm wrecking homes, lives, my own included. I can't even look at myself in the mirror. So, I end it with John. Just like that. Over a tense, awkward coffee. We're done, I tell him. He's shocked, tries to argue, but I'm firm. It's like waking up from a bad dream, only the nightmare is real, and it's my life. I'm a mess, guilty, ashamed, scared. It's like I've been sleepwalking, and now I have to face the music. Dave's brother knows, Sarah knows, and I'm just waiting for the moment Dave confronts me. It's like the sword of Damocles hanging over my head. So there you have it, my life in shambles. A part of me wishes I could rewind, make different choices. But here I am, bracing for the storm I've created. Stay tuned, buddy, 'cause I have a feeling this is just the beginning of the hurricane. So, here I am, feeling like I'm in the eye of a storm I brewed myself. Let me spill this straight, my life's turned into a train wreck, and there's no stopping it now. Picture this. I'm back home after the whole affair debacle, thinking I can somehow smooth things over. But no, life's got other plans. Out of nowhere, Dave, Mr. Lawyer, my husband, slaps me with divorce papers. I mean, he's always been the act now, talk later guy, but this. It's like a punch to the gut. He's got evidence, photos, messages, the whole 9 yards. I can't even deny it. The guy I've been married to for 12 years, father of my kids, he's done with me. Just like that. I'm scrambling, trying to fix things, but Dave's like a wall. He's hurt, angry, and who can blame him? I try talking, crying, begging even, but it's like talking to a statue. He's made up his mind. The love we had, the life we built, it's crumbling right before my eyes. As if that's not enough, my job's on the line too. Word gets out. You know how these things spread like wildfire, and suddenly, I'm the office pariah. Whispers in the hallway, awkward looks in the break room. My career, something I've worked my ass off for, is slipping through my fingers because of a stupid, reckless fling. But wait, it gets worse. The kids. God, the kids. They're caught in the crossfire of this mess. We're talking custody battles. Dave wants full custody, and why wouldn't he? I've messed up big time. The thought of losing my kids on top of everything else? It's gut-wrenching. They're confused, upset, and I can't even explain to them what's going on without feeling like the world's worst mom. So there you have it. My life's a disaster movie, and I'm the lead role. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I'm the driver. Stick around, buddy, 'cause this story's far from over. But let me tell you, it's one hell of a ride. So, there I was, feeling like I'd just been thrown into the deep end, no life jacket, no nothing. I'm scrambling for a lawyer, any lawyer who'd take my case. But man, with the kind of evidence Dave's got, my options are as thin as cheap toilet paper. Every lawyer I talk to gives me that pity look, you know? Like they're thinking, lady, you're up the creek without a paddle. And Dave, he's playing chess while I'm out here playing checkers. He's freezing accounts, redirecting funds, doing all this legal jujitsu. I'm watching my financial security vanish like smoke. Can't access my accounts, credit cards are getting declined. It's like one day I'm living a comfortable life, and the next, I'm counting pennies for groceries. Now, I'm thinking, maybe my friends will back me up. But guess what? Turns out, sympathy's in short supply. I get it, I messed up, but you'd think someone would throw me a bone, right? Nope. It's all cold shoulders and, I told you so's. I feel like I'm marooned on an island, shouting into the void. But wait, it gets juicier. The media catches wind of the scandal. Now, it's not just my personal life falling apart, it's a public spectacle. Front page of the local tabloid, my face plastered next to words like cheater and homewrecker. I can't even buy milk without getting side-eyed by the cashier. My parents are mortified, my kids are asking questions I can't answer, and I'm just sinking deeper into this pit of despair. And then, like some plot twist in a bad movie, this guy from Dave's past shows up. I've never heard of him, but he's all buddy-buddy with Dave, whispering advice, patting his back. Who is this guy? An old college friend? A secret ally? I don't know, but he's got this look, like he knows more than he should. So, here I am, broke, friendless, and the town's favorite gossip topic, watching my soon-to-be ex-husband getting all chummy with Mr. Mysterious. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion, except I'm the one on the train. Stick around, buddy, 'cause this story's far from over, and something tells me it's only gonna get wilder. Alright, grab a beer and let me spill this latest chapter of my life's tragicomedy. So, there I was, thinking I'd hit rock bottom, but guess what? The bottom wasn't even close. I find out, through the grapevine, that Dave, my soon-to-be ex-husband, knew about my affair way before the bomb dropped. Can you believe that? He was sitting on this ticking time bomb, gathering info like some secret agent. It blew my mind. I mean, I knew he was smart, but this was some next-level strategy. Feeling like a cornered animal, I decided to play dirty. I started digging into Dave's past, looking for skeletons that might give me some leverage. I mean, desperation makes you do crazy stuff, right? But Dave, he's always one step ahead. He had his defense lined up like dominoes. Every accusation I threw, he had a counter, discrediting my claims like swatting flies. I felt like I was in a courtroom drama, and let me tell you, I was not winning this case. Now, the kids. God, the kids. I tried, really tried, to keep that bond strong, but the tension was like a thick fog. Every conversation was like walking on eggshells. They were hurt, confused, and who can blame them? Their world was turning upside down, and there I was, the cause of it all. And then the gavel hit. Dave secured this ridiculously favorable custody arrangement. It felt like a sucker punch. The idea of seeing my kids every other weekend, like some distant aunt, it tore me apart. But what could I do? Dave had the upper hand, legally, morally, every way. The final blow? I had to move out of our family home. Packing up my life into boxes, leaving behind memories in every room, it was surreal. The home where we celebrated birthdays, had family dinners, where I thought we'd grow old together, now felt like a house of cards that had just collapsed. So there I was, standing in an empty house, echoes of the past bouncing off the walls. It was the end of an era, the end of the life I knew. I walked out of that door, not just leaving a house, but leaving behind the person I used to be. Buddy, if you ever think you've hit the bottom, just remember, life's got shovels. But hey, here's to new beginnings, however daunting they may be. Stick around, the next chapter's bound to be a doozy. Let me tell you, if life was a poker game, I'd be the one who went all in with a pair of twos. It's like I'm living in this B-movie, and every scene just gets worse. Grab a beer, 'cause this chapter's a doozy. Financially, I'm in the gutter. Remember those shopping sprees and fancy dinners? History. Now, I'm counting coins for a coffee. It's like one day you're on top of the world, and the next, you're scraping the bottom of your purse for change. My bank account's a desert, and I'm out here like a lost camel, just trying to make ends meet. But hey, life's not done kicking me yet. Trying to restart my life is like trying to glue a broken vase back together, it's just not the same. My reputation? Tarnished, like a forgotten silverware set. I'm that woman, the one people whisper about in hallways. Jobs? Friends? P-fed. As elusive as a mirage. Meanwhile, Dave's out there living his best life. His career's skyrocketing. Promotions, accolades, you name it. It's like he's Midas, and I'm, well, the donkey rear end. Every success story I hear about him is like a twist of the knife. He's on top, and I'm not. Then, as if fate's having a laugh, I bump into John. Mr. Affair, remember him? I'm thinking maybe a familiar face. A bit of sympathy, right? Wrong. He looks at me like I'm a stain on his shoe and walks away. It stung, you know? Like salt on a wound. That's when it hit me. I was just a fling for him, a blip on his radar. Ouch. But wait, there's more. Dave, my dear soon-to-be ex, drops another bomb. He planned his whole response to the affair from day one. Like some grandmaster in chess, he had his moves all mapped out. And me? I was just an oblivious pawn. Talk about a reality check. So, there I am, trying to claw my way back. Looking for any legal loophole to get some ground back. But guess what? Every appeal, every motion, it's like throwing darts in the dark. Nothing sticks. It's official. I'm out of moves, out of luck. It's like I'm in this never-ending free fall, just waiting to hit the ground. But hey, what can you do but brace for impact, right? So, that's where I'm at, buddy. Down, but not out. Life's dealt me a bad hand, but I'm still in the game. Stick around. Who knows what's next in this crazy story? So, there I am, feeling like the main character in one of those tragic movies where everything just spirals out of control. You know, the ones where you're screaming at the screen, don't do it. But it's too late. Grab a drink, 'cause this tale's a wild one. You won't believe it, but now I'm practically a ghost in my own circle. Friends? Poof. Vanished. They've all sided with Dave. I get it, I messed up, but the loneliness? It's deafening. I walk into a room, and it's like I've brought a cloud of silence with me. Ever felt invisible in a crowd? That's me, every day. But wait, it gets crazier. John's wife, Sarah, remember her? She's teamed up with Dave for a lawsuit. Talk about a plot twist. It's like they're this dynamic duo now, and I'm the villain in their story. Every time I see them together, it's like a knife twisting in my gut. Betrayal? Check. Humiliation? Double check. Job hunting's become my new hobby, except it's the worst kind. My name's mud out there. Every interview ends with that, "We'll call you," line, and guess what? They never do. The scandal's like this giant neon sign above my head, flashing, "Trouble." And Dave, oh boy, Dave's living it up. He's like the town's golden boy now, Mr. Resilience, Mr. Integrity. I see his picture in the local paper, and it's like he's won the lottery of life. Meanwhile, I'm scraping the bottom of every barrel I can find. Just when I think it can't get any worse, Sarah hits me with these legal challenges. It's like she's got this vendetta against me. Lawsuits, claims, you name it. I'm drowning in paperwork and lawyer fees I can't afford. But the real gut punch? The kids. My own flesh and blood. They won't even see me. They blame me for tearing our family apart, and it's like 1,000 needles in my heart every time they refuse to talk to me. I see them with Dave, laughing, living their lives, and it's like I'm watching from behind a glass wall. So, that's my life now. A series of unfortunate events. It's like I'm on this never-ending roller coaster of regret and what-ifs. But hey, life's a journey, right? Just didn't expect mine to take this detour through hell. Stick around, buddy, who knows what's next in this crazy ride. Alright, so you think you've heard it all, huh? Buckle up. 'Cause this ride's just hitting the peak of the crazy roller coaster. Grab your beer, and let's dive into this circus. So, there I am. Already feeling like I've been through a meat grinder. And then boom, I get this letter from my sister. You know. The one person I thought I could always count on? Yeah. Well, not anymore. She writes this scathing, no-holds-barred letter, basically disowning me. I mean, it's brutal. Every line is like a slap. She's done with me, just cuts the cord. Reading it felt like standing naked in a blizzard. No shelter, no warmth. But wait, it gets worse. The custody battle for the kids? I lost. Big time. The judge hands them over to Dave like I'm some unfit mother. It's like they just erased me from their lives. Can you imagine? The kids I've raised, tucked into bed, kissed their boo-boos, now they're just gone. It's like a piece of my soul got ripped out and stomped on. Now, here's the real kicker: money. Or should I say, the lack of it. I'm so strapped for cash it's like I'm living in one of those depressing country songs. I'm selling stuff left and right. First, it's the jewelry, you know. The nice stuff Dave gave me back when we were happy. Then it's the furniture. Some clothes, hell, even some old books. It's like I'm holding my own garage sale of broken dreams. I'm in this tiny apartment now, walls thin as paper, and every night's like an episode of Who's Arguing Tonight. It's a far cry from the life I used to live. Everything that made me, the home, the family dinners, the holidays, it's all just memories now. So here I am, no family, no money, no idea what's coming next. It's like I'm on this path, and every step is into the unknown. But you know what? There's something freeing about hitting rock bottom. Nowhere to go but up, right? So, cheers, buddy. To rock bottoms and new beginnings. Stick around. 'Cause I've got a feeling my story's far from over. Alright, pull up a chair and let me tell you about this crazy turn my life's taken. So there I am, thinking, hey, why not spill my guts in a tell-all book? I mean, everything's already hit the fan, right? What's there to lose? But, as soon as word gets out about my little writing project, bam! Legal threats start flying in like pigeons in the park. Dave's lawyers are on me like hawks, threatening everything short of the apocalypse if I publish a single word about our life. It's like I'm living in some legal thriller, except I'm the one getting grilled. Feeling pretty much like a pariah, I stumble across this small support group. They're like this band of misfits, each with their own sob story. Sitting in that circle, spilling my heart out, it's the first time in ages I don't feel like the world's against me. It's no therapy session with Oprah, but it's something. A tiny flicker of hope in my dumpster fire of a life. But, life's got more punches to throw. My health starts nosediving. Stress, anxiety, you name it, I've got it. I'm losing weight, not sleeping, and every morning feels like I'm climbing Mount Everest. It's like my body's on a protest march against my life choices. So here I am, at the end of this crazy, messed up saga. I'm sitting alone in this dingy apartment, my health in shambles, ostracized like some medieval leper. It's like I'm looking at my life through a cracked mirror, seeing all the pieces I can't put back together. And that's when it really hits me, the weight of what I've done, the sheer magnitude of the mess I've made. It's not just about the affair or the divorce, it's about every choice that led me here, sitting alone, a shadow of the person I used to be. So, cheers, my friend, to life lessons learned the hard way and to finding yourself at the bottom of the pit. It's a lonely place, but hey, the only way out is up. Stick around, who knows what's next in this roller coaster?